All right, guys. Quick notes for today, nothing serious. We are going to talk about lunar and solar eclipses. So to do that, we are going to start on page 21 in your paper notebook. So this should be after the page where we did the phases of the moon. So we're going to talk about solar eclipses first. So for a solar eclipse, to remember which is which, because some people get a little confused about which is which. Solar means sun. And when you eclipse something, you're going to block it or to cover it from view. So when you are talking about a solar eclipse, you are blocking the sun from view. When you're talking about a lunar eclipse, you are blocking the moon from view. So if you forget which is which, blocking the sun or blocking the moon. All right, so to block the sun, we've got to have the sun. I forgot to bring the right markers over. Sorry. So sun over here on the side. We're going to have those sun rays shooting off towards our direction. And if we're blocking it from view, we have to have a place to view it from. So right in the center here, we are going to have our Earth. You are here. So if you are viewing the sun from here, where does the moon have to be to block your view? It's got to be between the Earth and the sun. So we're going to have a little moon right there. Now, we know the sun is always shining on one side of the moon and the other side is dark. In this position, what phase of the moon do we have? This is our new moon. So we have the sun, the Earth, and a new moon. And the dark side of the moon is dark because it's not getting light from the sun. So that means it's in shadow. So our moon's shadow is going to extend from this dark side of the moon. So when we did the Eclipse Interactive, we saw that the umbra tapers down to a point. It's like a cone behind the moon. So that spot right there is getting the shade from the moon. This is our umbra. We also learned that there's a secondary shadow. It is less dark. It is not the umbra. It is close to the umbra. It's kind of next. So it's going to be called our penumbra. That prefix means next to or second. And so the penumbra, it covers a much larger portion of the Earth's surface because it fades out like this. So the umbra, let me make my umbra a little darker. The umbra always is the dark one. It tapers out from behind the moon. The penumbra is going to be much lighter, but it's going to cover a larger area. It tapers out from the moon. And if you are in the penumbra, I'm going to write P-E-N capital because on our formative, a lot of people wanted to call it the pre-umbra, and it's not, it's the penumbra. If you are in the umbra, you are going to have, I'm going to refocus, it looks a little fuzzy. You are going to have a total solar eclipse. If you are in the penumbra, and that's where you get your partial solar eclipse. Now, if you guys were here in a few years ago, I think it was 2017, we had a partial solar eclipse. So we would have been in this portion of the Earth's surface that was in that penumbra. If you drove up to Missouri and saw the total eclipse, then you would have been in the umbra of that. So let's drop down here, same song, second verse, to see the lunar eclipse. Lunar means the moon. So we are blocking out the moon this time. So everything starts the same with the sun and the earth. Those lovely sun rays. Our beautiful blue planet, you are still here. But now we want to block the moon from view. So when we block the moon, we're actually getting the moon in the shadow of the earth, right? So we need the moon to be on this side. And on this side, what kind of moon position are we in if the lighted side of the earth is facing, lighted side of the moon is facing the earth? This is going to be our full moon. Because that's fully lighted on the side facing the earth. So the moon still has an umbra. It's still sending out shadows this way, but we're not worried about those this time. We are worried about the umbra of the earth. So just like half of the moon is lit, half of the earth is lit, and then it has a shadow that tapers out behind it. This is also the umbra. So dark shadow, try not to scribble it in too dark, but it's sending its shadow this way. Till that's all filled in, that's going to be the umbra. And then there's also a penumbra on the earth shadow as well. It is less dark and it fans out and covers more area. That's how shadows always work. All right, so that's again our penumbra. I wrote. Again, I'm capitalizing the pen just to make clarity because some people thought it was a pre-umbra. It's the penumbra. Now, one difference between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse is here we saw that if you were in the umbra, you had a total eclipse. If you were in the penumbra, you had a partial eclipse. It works a little bit differently for the moon. This is your total lunar eclipse. If you want a partial lunar eclipse, then actually what happens is you have the earth, you have that umbra, and to get a partial eclipse, what happens is the moon is only partially within the umbra. It works a little bit differently. So that's going to give you a partial eclipse when the moon is only partially within that umbra. There is a such thing as a penumbral eclipse, but it is such a faint change in the brightness of the moon that people don't really notice it. Now there's one super important thing about eclipses that we didn't put on here. So I'm going to put it in bright red right here in the middle. If you have room to do that, please do that as well, but find a place on here somewhere if you don't have room in the middle. Why don't we have an eclipse every month? We talked about the plane, the orbital plane of the moon being tilted just slightly. So sometimes it's a little high, sometimes it's a little low, but occasionally you get that perfect line up. So eclipses do not occur every month. Because the moon's orbital plane is tilted 5 degrees. So what we're talking about is not the axis of the moon being tilted, because that's not going to affect how it blocks the sun. What we're talking about is that entire orbital plane. So we're going to talk tomorrow about the scale of our solar system, the scale of some of the objects in our solar system, but please make sure you get these notes into your notebook.